Welcome to Data Founders, an interview series where we talk to data science startup founders and investors. Since September, we've recorded 13 interviews, and you can find all of them at datafounders.io. You also can sign up there for our updates and for events that we will hopefully launch this year if pandemic permits. Today, our guest is Surbhi Rathore, the CEO and the co-founder of Symbl that builds conversational intelligence APIs. It's a pleasure to have you here, Surbhi.
Thank you so much, Peter. Pleasure's all mine.
Awesome. So to start the conversation, tell us a bit about yourself and about Symbl as well.
Yeah, so as you rightly introduced, I'm Surbhi, the CEO and co-founder of Symbl. By background, I'm an electronics engineer and gradually transitioned into software, building software applications in network security, eventually telecommunications, working a lot on CRM systems, and then eventually conversational AI. Did very varied roles all the way from being an engineer to leading engineering teams, pre-sales, sales for technical products. Last couple of years before starting Symbl, I was one of the persons involved in establishing early pre-sales and implementation teams for a conversational AI product in telecommunication domain, and thereafter Symbl. So we were very excited looking at the landscape of how a scalable voice tech infrastructure has scaled human to machine interactions and chatbots, and wanted to bring the same scalability and ease for developers that are building intelligent systems via human to human interactions. And that is really what the core foundation of Symbl is. It's an API platform that enables developers to analyze voice, text, video conversations data across several channels with contextual insights and help them go beyond transcription out of the box.
Fantastic. And we will definitely talk a bit more about Symbl, about business models, all that kind of stuff later. But first, I would really love to talk more about your experience. You mentioned at least two interesting transitions within your role, from development to team leading to commercial aspects, and then transition to entrepreneurship. And there is a third transition we've talked before recording this podcast. You moved to the US, as far as I remember, right?
That's right.
Probably a lot of interesting things to discuss. Let's start maybe from the transition to founding, how the idea came up and how in general you decided and why you decided to become a founder and to launch your company, given that you had a nice career, progressing, different roles, all that kind of things.
Yeah, well, it was more tricky than that. We were supposed to move to Sydney with my husband. I mean, I was supposed to move to Sydney with my husband, and I had an option: either go to the Bay Area to build a company or go and have a nice corporate life in Sydney. So it was both personal and professional choices that we made. But I mean, I think it was really an opportunity. I was opportunity hungry since the beginning. I almost feel that a lot of us have so much amazing talent, but we really lack the right opportunity. And someone told this to me very early on in my career that, I mean, you have a lot of potential, but you just lack an opportunity. So I have been opportunity hungry throughout my life. And whenever there is one, I just go insane in grabbing it. I just have this weird drive to grab that opportunity. And the same thing happened at this point of time when starting Symbl. I got interacted a lot within the voice tech ecosystem because I was working in almost the same space within the company. Saw the journey of other people that have built companies from scratch, got really excited. My co-founder had built several companies before. So I spent a lot of time interacting with him because we were working on the same project. Although I know him from years, but it was only over the last couple of years that we worked on a similar project together in actually the same roles that we are doing right now at Symbl, almost the same roles. So it was kind of like all forces of the nature that opened up doors and said, well, now is the time, you have this idea that you guys have been thinking about. You're traveling to the Bay Area and you've gotten into an ecosystem here, which is amazing. You have some connections that by which you can start. Like, should you start today or not? And yeah, it just felt like the right time because I actually quit my job earlier than my co-founder did. I took a 3 months even before starting the company, just to assess the market.
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to be really sure that if I'm jumping into this, let me validate what other companies are there trying to solve the same problem. Let me create my own network, because having worked in a corporate job, we don't actually realize that we lack so much network. And so that's kind of one of the things that I did. And once I had some intuition and all, I had validated my intuition, plus I had data points of customers that could sign up immediately after we built something like that. That's when I told my co-founder, okay, I think I have enough data for us to start. I think it's time for you to leave the job and let's get started full time on this. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. And what was your journey towards first high level idea? Let's say natural language processing, let's say API,
Yeah.
quite high level, before you even started to do quite detailed customer development. So I've
Yeah.
heard different options. Some people approach it from analytical perspectives. Let's look McKinsey report and look where there are gaps. Somebody else's use some analogies from other sectors and industries to find the
Yeah.
idea. What was your approach?
Yeah, I think our idea was driven by two people in parallel. One is my co-founder, which I mean give all credit for actually the originality of the idea. I mean he's been working on just actually back in 2015, my co-founder had something called as repetitive strain injury in his hands. So for one whole year, he could not use his hands.
Mm,
And it was really by his own personal problem that he was challenged by using voice technology for years. And he every year he kept experimenting with state of the art machine learning and see where it is. And it was very rightful when we were actually working in a conversational AI space and already interacting with voice, chatbots and virtual assistant, that he tried experimenting, the other part of the equation, like just voice conversations in between humans and where is state of the art. And so it was very driven by his own personal problem that he
mhm,
faced years ago of not being able to use his hands, and how handicapped someone feels when you have to rely on other people, and having voice technology to help you really, really, really elevates your experience. So meeting notes was kind of like a very big trigger for us. And
yeah,
it's a problem that everyone relates to, that, oh my God, we're spending so much time in meeting notes. And when you're not able to use your hands and you're asked to take meeting notes in a meeting, or you're not able to take meeting notes, it really it's pathetic, right? Because then you really have to rely on someone else. So I mean, it was a lot driven by his own personal problems, and then I looked at it a little from an analytical and data standpoint and said, that's interesting. We're working on human to machine interactions. What other voice tech infrastructures exist for human to human? Let me go and see. And that's when I came across Gong and Chorus and Callminer and all these different amazing products that have built beautiful experiences for sales intelligence or customer support intelligence, and building end user products. An API platform can only thrive in a market. I always say that when there are enough end user products
mhm,
to showcase the developers of how this kind of capability is valuable for an end user. So I did all this data collection and data point, and I think it was a lot of his drive of his personal problem that led us to the idea.
mhm, mhm. Fantastic. That's a very interesting combination of both approaches, actually. And when you moved a bit closer towards more detailed customer development, a typical question that I hear is how actually to get these first people to talk to you. So what did you use? Was it through your network from your corporate job or some other ways? Did you engage with these people first, just to talk to them and to understand better what the problem is
Yeah,
with NLP
I
space?
mean, I didn't realize when I was working in Amdocs, all my network was really just within Amdocs or the customers of Amdocs. Like really, that was it. So I didn't know many people outside the company. And I think most of us who are in a corporate job now, things are more vocal. I'm talking about like 3 years back. That time there was no COVID, so things were lesser accessible. You had to be in person to attend meetups. And so that's because of that, the first 3 months that I did was really staying in Bay Area and just going in every single meetup that I can. And I almost like it became so repetitive that I started meeting the same people over and over again. But from morning 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all cocktail catch ups to coffee hangouts to general assembly meetups, like I did all of it, like literally. And I was out on the road, just meeting people, going in events, and it helped a lot because when you meet people, you create interactions, you get out of your comfort zone. I've always been very extrovert. I mean, since the beginning, like I've always been able to communicate my thoughts, and being in Amdocs in a pre-sales sort of a capacity, sorts pre-sales capacity. I mean, that was kind of my interaction with customers was really heavy.
Mhm.
But just being able to go to those meetups in the Bay Area really helped to create initial network, and then just reaching out to people on LinkedIn. I think we just underestimate the power of these social channels, and
Mhm.
that's all I did. Just like, I'm a founder building a new company. I would really appreciate 15 minutes time from you, whether in person, let me buy you a coffee, or on a phone call, whatever works for you. And that's how actually we got all our early customers.
Mhm. Mhm. And
Yeah.
maybe if you can recall, what were maybe the major learnings for you about how to organize this process? So what you would be doing differently, maybe having this experience. Maybe some hints, ideas, heuristics, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was less organized in joining different communities. I joined each and every community that I came across, and spent a lot of time there because it was my first time. But I think going forward, for anyone else getting into a new space, there are now communities with respect to specific themes. Like there are specific voice communities, or there are like UC communities, call center providers communities, both on LinkedIn groups as well as Slack channels, right? And even meetups, doing very targeted outreach to specific customer profile is really helpful. Also, identifying, I think, your customer profile more correctly really helps when you do a detailed customer development. So I never created an ICP profile for
Mhm.
myself before doing customer development. I would highly recommend anyone going into customer development first create an ICP, test it out with 5 people, and then go and scale that.
Mhm. And the ICP stands for those of us
Uh, yeah, it stands for
deep customer profile.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's very important point. And when you work in such a, let's call it deep tech maybe, or data science space,
Yeah.
uh, in your opinion, does the process of customer development somehow different? Is it somehow different from, let's say, doing customer development for, let's call it traditional SaaS or whatever? Are there any secret sauce there maybe, or some unusual things, or it's more or less the
Yeah. Yeah. In my experience, I mean, just I found out that irrespective of what technology you use in the back end, it's all about the customer. They don't care about whether you're using like deep tech NLP or you're using off the shelf like an open source platform. All they care about is, do I get a good experience? Does this solve my problem? And what's the value? And then only then I will talk and pay to you. So although I mean, it helps when you start to talk about yourselves as a differentiation and say that why we are unique than other players in the market, so in that kind of a subset. But when we were building Symbl early on, there wasn't any company that we could refer ourselves to and say, well, we're going to do this better.
Mhm.
We couldn't make that statement because it was a whole new concept. I mean, 3 years ago, the concept of chatbots was so prominent that any kind of like an AI solution for meetings was like a chatbot in a meeting.
Mhm.
That's how it was, and that's kind of how we started. And we told people that no, forget about chatbots. We are telling you it's going to be passive recommendations that will happen automatically during the conversation. I mean, that's the experience that we're talking about. So, actually, all our early customers, I never told them about why our models are going to be different and what difference are we going to do, because at the end of the day, it's all about the value that they get. And if they understand the value from a customer standpoint, I think it's enough for them to be convinced.
Mhm. Mhm. Cool, cool. And there is another, I guess, important point within the customer development process is to ask the right questions. And there are a lot of books about that, valuable advice there. What was maybe your approach or maybe your questions that were really the most important ones? After answering those, you decided that yes, I'm sure that I'm doing the right thing. First,
Yeah,
how to find these questions, how to identify them, and maybe you can give a couple of examples from your notebook.
sure. So I think customer discovery and development is a continued process. It you must run it throughout the life cycle of the company, and you only get better at every time. New feature, new product, new kind of market segment that you want to reach out to, expand the business, new go to market. Every time people will need to do a continued customer discovery and development process. When I started Symbl, and the first ones that I did was very bad because I had no experience and did not know like what is asking the best questions really mean. So I think eventually I probably after we did Techstars and moved to Seattle, and we did like pretty intensive customer development discovery workshops with some of the key mentors here with Techstars Network. Post that, the kind of discovery and development I did, I was very proud of myself for them because it then became a combination of steering the customer to actually signing a pilot and solving and asking them of how are they solving that problem together. Because the early customer discoveries that I did was really about just understanding their pain points and asking them what kind of a solution will it help them. But there's a big missing piece of the equation of like what's next or next steps that we mostly forget. And so attaching that to the customer development or discovery really helps in like creating a pipeline of a wait list for you. And in a startup, that's like a gold mine that can never come out from anywhere. So, and also once the customer is in the moment, they will get excited about that problem and they will get to next steps. But if you go back to them again after, like probably a month or so and say, well, we spoke about that problem and we're now planning to do something like that. Would you be interested? You have to bring them again onto the same journey and make them realize the same point because they cannot see yet what you would be building. So I think that attaching what's next and how do I work with you to solve this problem, getting them excited to that level in customer development really helps. So that's kind of what I did after Techstars.
Yes, cool. That's really interesting to keep a person excited. It's not the easiest task. And
Yeah.
I guess despite the fact that you were prepared, at least I guess partially, right? You were doing pre-sales, you were doing some commercial work. But I guess there were moments when you felt maybe disoriented, maybe tired, whatever. And sometimes entrepreneurs, they wanted to just throw it away sometimes, especially when you do it in a foreign country. I can say pretty much the same for myself. I
Yeah.
moved to the UK 5 years ago. Sometimes I was very disappointed. Were there any maybe mental tricks or maybe things that helped you to return to what you were doing in an emotional way? Maybe just to return to your trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard for founders to maintain, like a constant emotional quotient. I always say that because you can come out of a really good meeting and be really excited about the next one, and then the next meeting would really suck, and then you would come out and be really disappointed getting into the next meeting. So, maintaining a constant EQ is like really important. I think family really helps. Like, families ground you like nothing else. So yeah, my husband at that time was moving to Sydney. So we were in a lot of conversations about his move and, like how is he doing and what's the house that he's taking and things like that. So it helped me really get connected to the other part of the world. But then also just support from the family and saying that it's okay if we don't talk for days and you just call us on the weekend and tell us you're fine because we know that you're into it. So I think having that helps. Taking a break once in a while, like I used to definitely, I'm a big beach person, so used to just go to all the nice beaches on the coast, like once in 2 weeks or something. Just drive around and peace out. So I think that really helps.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the same things worked for me. Just walking in terms of
Yeah,
changing the scene, and family, absolutely a
yeah,
very supportive thing. Absolutely, if you may call it thing. And an interesting aspect of all things that you've done and doing is, correct me if I'm wrong, you run a distributed team, right? So you have a team
yeah,
in the US and in India, right?
yeah,
That's very challenging thing, and I know that quite many actually tech startups do that because sometimes talent pool is outside of the valley,
yeah,
right? And you can work with this talent pool and
Yeah.
do it and help people to work with the value, etc. What were maybe the most interesting findings, the most interesting lessons from working and running a distributed team? And if there is any difference for you between again traditional team, distributed team, and data science driven distributed team, is there any difference in management?
Yeah. I mean, we not just have a distributed team in different locations, we also are distributed amongst time zones.
Mm-hmm,
So 50% of our team is in India and 50% in the US. So we are literally like 12 and a half hours kind of like difference. And it becomes really challenging at times. And there are trade-offs. The Just why we still do it is because we run at double the velocity. I mean, the same function runs in the daytime in the US and then nighttime in India. So you end up getting work done much faster.
mm-hmm,
And that's the value of it. I mean, the same work that would be done in 2 days would be done in 1 day. But initially, when we started the company, it was kind of like a hybrid remote. The teams were co-located at two regions. So we had most of the people in Seattle and then most of the people back in India, Pune.
mm-hmm,
And that was fine because people could still come to office, interact with each other, but they only had to, do remotely with a different region.
mm-hmm,
But post COVID, things have changed drastically. So now it's basically like we expanded, and when we expanded, we got like 50% of the team is now not co-located in the regions with other people. So it's definitely a challenge, and we're still learning. Some of the things that we really do is try to make sure that how can teams, how can we go for like offsites, like frequent offsites where people still meet.
mm-hmm,
How every Thursday we have something called as an all jam session where we just hang out and play games all together, and probably hang out in breakout rooms and talk some personal stuff or just connect with each other. Communication is, I think, so critical. And then we just live in Slack. I think it's kind of like our office space, and asynchronously working in Slack really helps. Now we've started to really interact with each other on Slack at a more personal level. So like every time someone's going out for lunch, or taking a break, or getting a coffee, we just ping it in our channel, because it just helps create like that personal kind of like a feeling. It's like someone sitting next to you and just getting a coffee and asking you to that, hey, I'm taking a coffee break, why don't you go and get one? And it's really cool. So just like small things like this can really help you rebuild the connection that we are missing today in kind of like personal one-on-one setting. Yeah, and just keep trying different things. I think that's so critical because there's no rule book and no one's figured it out yet. So don't be afraid to just like experiment and do cool things. Like some weeks we play taboo, some weeks we do like business KPIs, some weeks we have just started to do overview of functions. Because as a startup, when you grow from like beyond a seed stage, you start adding so many new functions in the company repetitively. And like customer support, success, devrel, marketing. What does that really mean for other people in the company who have purely a builder mindset? So just doing regular sessions by those people, telling the rest of the company on, this is the overall KPI of, let's say, devrel. This is how it's going to help us achieve our company goals together. So just educating everyone about everyone else's roles really help. Yeah.
mm-hmm. And how someone may make these decisions about which functions shall go to the which location, because some functions may
Yeah.
stay with you and others may go outside. Let me pause here. I guess the light went down in my room. Give me a sec. We are live again. Yeah.
Okay. So your question about like how do you make a decision in terms of where you should have the distributed team based on we did it based on our customer. So like what is the region that our customers exist, and where do we need maximum customer interaction in a specific time zone, and what functions are important in those time zones. So for example, sales are very important in this time zones. Marketing is critical. Some of the marketing functions are critical in the time zone. Engineering is important from a customer standpoint. So we got all the solutions engineer, sales engineer in this time zone, a few other engineers, so that if something comes up, we are able to support them here. But then the maximum of data science and engineering, we build it in India, because that is something that can happen asynchronously in a non-time zone, and it's actually needed because sometimes there's just an urgent bug that needs to be fixed. So do you ask people in the US to stay up all the night and fix it in the next day before, I mean, office hours for other people, or can you actually offload it back to India? And that really helps. So that's kind of how we did it.
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting aspect about time zones, actually. Yeah, because sometimes the answer is just have your team where your customer is, but there is another interesting dimension that you highlighted, is actually time zone that's not
Yeah.
always considered. And now you're growing, you're past the seed stage. What are your thoughts about the market in general? When you look at the NLP space or conversational intelligence space, do you think that there are some niches or maybe segments where other startups may be created, or it's done and nobody need to think about building a startup in NLP anymore?
No, I think the pie is so big that the everyone can have a significant piece of the pie. Overall the market is pretty huge. NLP, applied to different areas like documents, like conversations between chatbots and humans, and human to human interactions, and then the whole text processing landscape are like four different kind of dimensions. We have a lot of companies in the chatbot space that have kind of like made it simple to be able to integrate a chatbot, build a chatbot, integrate it. Like Rasa is a great example of an open source system that you can use. But there are still opportunities of people using companies like Rasa, because, and that's why you will see more companies in the virtual assistant space coming up, making it really easy for a business user to be able to, become a builder. And I think that's the transition that we will, there's always going to be an opportunity that how to expand the horizon of who do you call a developer, and that helps us create opportunities in the NLP space. That how easy can we make it, and what level of ease is the developer persona ready to play around or build with your tools. It could be fairly like at the ground infrastructure level, using tools that already exist, like open source models, or build it by themselves using TensorFlows, etc., or go all the way to a no code solution where it's kind of like a technical product manager can actually set up something for their own company. So I think this entire stretch of landscape, from heavy building to no building at all, gives an opportunity to companies that exist today, new startups, to find out their own niches in between. That, hey, I'm going to build for the business intelligence developer, or I'm going to build for the product manager persona, or I will build for the data scientist to make them easy to deploy models. Gives us an opportunity to take NLP to the next level, because at the end of the day, technology is useless if it's not adopted.
Yeah.
And figuring out that adoption problem is a bigger challenge. And how to scale adoption across the different personas that are making decisions, because not every company has a data scientist that can make a decision to deploy NLP, but they do need NLP in because they have tons of data within their own products or workflows that could really help them give superpowers to their business. So I think the key persona of or of the decision maker or your customer really defines of what type of a product will you build over the technology.
And how do you see maybe building a defensive and entry barriers in your space without opening the secrets for Symbl? I mean, in a general sense, in the sense of any kind of a framework, we constantly hear that there should be entry barriers, there should be some modes that tech startup should build around. So what are your thoughts about that, especially for data science startups?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not incorrect that there are data modes, and definitely if you are trying to build a platform, let's say in sales, having tons of meetings of sales calls, and being able to capture the key critical data, and being able to in do like predictive analytics later on, combining with your conversation data on top of it, that based on how your SDR is talking and your AEs are talking to the customer, we predict that the deal is 50% risk of not closing. And that's a great metric to predict. And that will only happen if you have tons of data. But then there are other types of systems which are hybrid in nature, which is what Symbl is really. And we talk about it a lot that we do have some very important data with us, obviously, that helps define some of the very foundational stuff of what to call an action item or what to call a follow-up or how to look at certain patterns which are critical to all conversations horizontally, not just meetings, not just sales, because we are a horizontal platform. But we have built our systems in a very hybrid fashion, combining both unsupervised machine learning and with supervised machine learning. And that has, so along with deep learning, we have kind of like extended deep learning by our unsupervised layer that helps us go beyond that data limitation, because you don't want to, like, for us, we don't want to get biased to a specific vertical of data because we're horizontal. So it's a bit of a challenge when you think about building an open domain system that is not restricted and not biased to a specific type of conversation. And that's where you have to go beyond deep learning, because I think deep learning is not the answer for all problems. Although, I mean, like, not demining it at all, because for some use cases, deep learning is great because you just need data, want to do pattern matching and recognition, and you can build your own neural networks to do that. So, yeah.
And you mentioned very interesting distinction, horizontal platforms versus vertical ones. There are some industries like fintech when I hear a lot about APIs as well, and there are precisely fintech APIs, right, for the financial sector. And your choice is to go horizontal. What was the motivation or maybe a framework for someone, for a data scientist who builds a startup, starts a startup, to decide whether to go horizontal or vertically? What would be your advice here?
It's very difficult to build a horizontal platform. I would not deny that for sure. And we could only build it because we thought that we could. And we tested it early phases and the results were promising. But I mean, ideally, even if you talk to investors, most of them will obviously tell you, or any advisor or any mentor will tell you to pick a vertical and go really deep into it and solve that problem. But you should have a very strong conviction of solving that vertical problem when you're building the platform. And it should be very aligned with the mission and vision of the founders that actually want to do that. So it's not about like, should I pick a vertical or horizontal? It's like, what is the kind of company that you want to build as a founder? Because that's something that needs to always stay within you, that passion of continuing to build that company in the same way. And product is all that matters in a startup, right? So for us, when we started the company, we never thought of the differentiation in vertical and horizontal because our core thesis was to build a platform that developers can easily use to analyze conversation data. It is different than saying that we want to build a platform for analyzing sales calls and hand it over to businesses. Our persona was a developer that is trying to solve a problem, and their options today are using open source systems or using cloud services with Google and AWS. And we wanted to make it really easy for them to build these systems and let them integrate in their products. So it was never an option for us to think about horizontal versus vertical, but I must say that it is a difficult path to be on because you look at more broader and abstract level of understanding as opposed to looking at just one single place and what matters there. So it's really about what you want to do as a company.
And when you opted for this horizontal approach, I assume you have done some prioritization within different verticals, right? You still need to pick some verticals where you can start. Was it more or less random, or again, you did some research and did have some approach and framework for that?
Yeah. I mean, because we were building an API platform, it was important to us to find out that which verticals have the maximum end user products. And meetings, sales, customer support, like these were the three verticals where there was maximum concentration of B2B products. And they were like they were already building conversation intelligence in those products, and very successful, really good market demand, good price tags attached to the usage or user seat. So it was a good validation that there is humongous end user value now, and that's why choosing three verticals helps, because again, it abstracts away your thinking of going into a single vertical. and makes you think back about how does our single platform solve all these three vertical problems. So that's kind of how we approached it.
Mhm, mhm. That's fantastic insights, and I'm sure you can talk much more about that, but just cautious of your time. I'll probably ask two last questions. Number one is, if we did we miss something? We talked quite a lot about different things, but if there is anything that you believe deserves to be discussed but we didn't cover it, any ideas, themes, maybe advice?
No, I think just given the situation in COVID, the cold start problem for founders is really eliminated. I would say there were accelerators which were only available in person for you to come and join. Now they're all global. There's always a bit of hinge when you're moving from like a corporate role to actually starting a company. That can really be eliminated now by all these digital mediums. So I would just like request everyone who's been thinking about building a company that take a chance, because this is a good time. Voice, and specifically in voice, more so because that's the only medium that we are talking on like the whole day.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge opportunity to build, voice first companies, capitalize the conversation data that is happening in webinars, in call centers, in sales, e-learning, healthcare. There's just so much data which is being transitioned on digital channels. There's a big opportunity to be able to build that. And yeah, so capitalize on some of the communities around you, because everything's digital. Accelerator programs are digital now, and get started.
That's a fantastic advice. And maybe you can mention any resources, any personas, maybe someone in the data science space, or maybe even narrower in the NLP space, need to
Yeah.
follow to get maybe some interesting ideas, insights, or support.
Yeah, I think I referred to Fast.ai, which is a great community. Rachel is runs that. It's a great community for learning new concepts as well as just connecting for validation with other data scientists. I'm also a part of Women in AI, Women in Voice communities. They're really awesome communities to be a part of. Wealth of opportunities. Always people looking for co-founders there also. And then when you start a company and you're totally clueless on how to get started, I actually joined 1M by 1M, which is a program, a global kind of like a program, equity free, run by Sramana Mitra. She's based out of the Bay Area, and it's kind of like virtual lectures already created for you to go through the steps 1 to 10. I mean, now everything is available digitally also, so there are more options, but that's what I did. And then after that went to Techstars Seattle, which was kind of like one of the big cherries in our journey so far, getting connected in the right network. So yeah, these are some of the resources that I used.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Surbhi. That's a wonderful talk, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot of good news from you and from Symbl. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. It was a pleasure talking to you today. And yeah, if anyone wants to connect with me, I'm happy to discuss and brainstorm any use cases around voice ecosystem or conversation intelligence tech, NLP. Like, free to reach out. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. Surbhi Rathore.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.